People are still doing that? There are a ton of things people do that boggle the mind, things we know to have no positive benefit to our lives and are often actually a detriment. Why do we do these things? Habit, weakness, defiance? Probably a combination of all these and more. It really is amazing that we will intentionally do something that we know we will suffer for later. I understand this behavior in young people. I did a bunch of dumb things when I was younger that I can't explain. But as we grow older, we're supposed to grow smarter, or at least have more knowledge, and not make the same mistakes we did in the past. Nevertheless, there are countless people who continually make the same mistakes and pay for them exponentially each time. People often say, I don't know why I did that, but we all know why we do things, because we want to. It's very disingenuous for us to lie and say we don't know why we did something. We should own the fact that we knew what we were doing. There is no mysterious force controlling us, there is only us and our desire to do what we want. The way to ascend is to own what we do and learn from it. We can either disregard the feelings we have urging us against making the same mistake and suffer the same consequences, or learn from the mistake and strive to not give in to our own weaknesses. Smoking. In the past, cigarettes and cigars made people stink, stained fingers and teeth, covered everything in a disgusting film, etc. But I could possibly understand smoking back when they had no idea that cigarettes and cigars were a detriment to one's health, especially when the tobacco companies were telling people that if they smoke, they will be cool or get girls or guys. I kind of get it. However, now that we know smoking is responsible for almost 500,000 deaths a year, over 40,000 due to secondhand smoke, I don't get it at all. What's the attraction? Is the buzz that good that people must have it? Is the constant rise in price worth it? That's another issue I don't get. People keep paying more and more for something that is a detriment to them. I used to smoke for a long time, from high school until a little less halfway through my military career. Then, one day, I came to my senses and quit cold turkey. I realized how ridiculous it was and just quit. I hear people say that they are addicted, but that is just one of two things. They're weak or they don't want to quit. I think the latter is the hardest because although people know they shouldn't smoke, some simply don't want to quit. And it is nearly impossible to stop doing something if you don't want to. Those in the first category know who they are. They are too weak to endure the cravings and or withdrawals. This is the epitome of weakness and very short-sighted. People allow their cravings and withdrawal side effects to control their lives when they should be in control of their own life. If you want to quit, simply decide that you are not going to let anything control you and that you don't need anything that isn't going to help you be a better version of you. Drugs. Speaking of drugs, which nicotine is, I can't believe people still do them. I've never done any hard drugs, just smoked some pot in high school, but I have consumed my fair share of alcohol and taken prescription drugs on orders from a doctor, and I'm sure the experience is similar. In the not-so-distant past, I had an epiphany. I'm the type of person who boils things down to the root issue and tries to decide why something is done, and I simply can't understand being under the influence of anything anymore. The thought of not being in control or leaving my behavior to chance is no longer a risk I'm willing to take. Regarding alcohol, one of the most harmful drugs, there is the argument of only having one or two a night, but I don't see the point of that either. I mean, what's the purpose? Some say to wind down, some lie to themselves and say it's for their heart, others say it helps them sleep, but there have been numerous studies that debunk most of that. As far as alcohol, specifically red wine, being healthy, the jury is still out. Most of the websites I've seen on the subject use may and assumption liberally and never actually commit to the idea that red wine is good for you. It really is odd that people adamantly justify alcohol when it is the same, if not worse, than some legal drugs regarding the pain it causes its users. Why is it legal and all other drugs aren't? Heroin used to be prescribed by doctors, and I don't remember anything in the history books about an opioid epidemic. Heck, they used to put cocaine in soft drinks. Did this result in everyone developing a cocaine habit? It really does seem odd that a drug like alcohol, given all the damage it causes humans, is legal but almost everything else isn't. If you think about it, there is no logical reason for anything a person chooses to ingest to be illegal. People say that some drugs make people do things that are illegal, but so does alcohol. People say that some drugs make you violent, so does alcohol in some people. The only reason I can really think of is that it has become a societal norm and it's a huge business. Those two factors usually justify anything. As far as drugs making someone do something illegal, that's another reason not to do them, but that's not a justification to make drugs illegal. Speaking of drugs that are good for you, marijuana has become mainstream now due to its harmless nature. Weed advocates insist that it's far more harmless than alcohol, which may be true to a point. I haven't found any definitive studies stating that children under 25 are less susceptible to brain damage by smoking pot than they are from drinking alcohol. Yes, I said children under 25 because a person's prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until they are 25 or so. That means that all those children, myself included, who were drinking massive amounts of alcohol and those smoking weed and doing other drugs were crushing the part of the brain responsible for rational thought before it was fully capable of rational thought. This begs the question, if someone waited until their prefrontal cortex was fully developed before they made the decision to use drugs or alcohol, would they do it at all? I doubt it. I would venture to say that people drink alcohol or use drugs because they were brought up in a culture that celebrated it. Parents and other adults around me drank and looked like they were having fun, so kids then thought it was cool and they did it. I was brought up to think drinking was the norm, and if you didn't drink, you were weird or lame. How many of my dendrites were damaged, I wonder? Looking back, I think I had a lot of fun, but I often wonder what would have happened if I had refrained or focused on important things, or simply refrained in order to give my brain a chance to fully form. Daylight savings time. Just when you or your kids get on a schedule, they shift us an hour and everyone gets jacked up. Is anyone really benefiting from it anymore? If so, tough. Most of us aren't, and we shouldn't be catering to the few. The few should be conforming to the masses. This can be said about a great deal of other things too. Street fighting. Something else I don't understand is street fighting. I totally get MMA, jiu-jitsu, or whatever. They're great ways to stay in shape, hone skills to defend yourself against criminals, and satisfy a natural desire for competition and combat. But getting in fights as an adult? I don't understand it. Let me preface this by saying I've had my share of bar and or street fights, and I'm very lucky that I didn't hurt someone, get hurt, or wind up in jail. That's the problem with illegal fights. You just don't know how they're going to end, and that uncertainty is not how someone who has ascended behaves. Obviously, I'm not talking about defense of yourself, family, or friends, or innocent victims. I'm talking about fighting for no good reason. Why are they even fighting? I've touched on this elsewhere, but it just seems like people like to do it. It's like a contest or a test of manhood, but these people don't account for the terrible things that could happen, or maybe they just don't care. Either way, fighting is a risky proposition and shouldn't be conducted impulsively. Bike safety. I can only chalk up this next part to ignorance, but how are people still riding their bikes against the flow of traffic and walking with the flow of traffic? Parents, for the love of God, please teach your children to walk against traffic and ride their bikes with the flow of traffic. They're going to get hurt someday and it'll be unnecessary. Shoot, teach them bike safety in general, helmets, hand and arm signals, and the like. It's not enough to ensure that they can walk or ride. You must include every aspect of every task you teach them. Leaving anything out is setting them up for failure. The only explanation is that the parents don't know either. It's not only dangerous, but a real pain in the butt. I'm that guy who on the spot corrects kids when they're doing either one of those things. They always look at me either with contempt or fear, but at least the word is getting out. Also, I can't believe people are still using those child bike seats that attach to the bike itself. What happens if the bike falls over or you run into something? It seems like the child would be very susceptible to injury if the bike were to fall on its side. I suggest the trailer because the child can sit comfortably and you can put some toys or books in there in case they get bored. If they're strapped into the seat on the bike, they just have to sit there. Also, with the trailer, if the bike falls on its side, it won't harm the child because the mechanism that attaches the trailer to the bike isn't rigid and allows for the bike to fall while keeping the trailer upright. Some will say the bike seat is cheaper, but I don't think sacrificing safety for frugality is prudent. Also, a quick internet search shows that most seats are comparable in price to a trailer. Trends and fads. I never really understood this concept. A person or persons think that something is cool, so other people do it. Like wearing the same kind of clothes or costumes, as I call them. I don't understand why anyone would want to look like anyone else. Even when I was following trends, I never really understood why I was doing it. It felt weird, like I was trying to be someone I wasn't. I think as little kids, we all do it. We just want to be like our buddies and do what they do. But as we grow older, we started doing things that strangers do simply to be cool. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, 1970s and 1980s, that is. And a trend I only tried a couple of times was putting a tight roll in the bottom of my jeans. I never thought it looked cool, and I thought it looked feminine and dumb for guys. I felt weird doing it and stopped immediately. I believe after that is when I stopped following trends or fads, or at least I stopped following the popular ones. I think I based my look off those who didn't follow the norm and bucked the system. I guess that's another way of following trends or fads, even though it's only trendy to a certain group of people. I never tried to be anyone else, I don't think. I just tried to be comfortable and not look like everyone else. I think the fact that we were poor and that I already had crappy clothes helped immensely. It's not hard to look like a rebel, read dirtbag, when you don't have any other choice. I did have a couple sets of nice clothes, but they weren't name brand, so they weren't really nice in anyone's eyes. I used to get asked by cool people where I got my clothes, and I would just say the mall, even though I really had no idea where they came from because my parents or my family bought them for me. This is probably why I loathe shopping to this day. The cool people would ask in what store in the mall I bought my clothing in an obvious attempt to shame me into lying or admitting that the clothes came from Walmart or Kmart. Truthfully, I did know that they didn't come from the mall, but I didn't really want to deal with any crap from them. These events, coupled with the fact that I spent most of my life in the military, probably form my negative opinion of fads or being trendy. It just seems fake and contrived, like people are trying to be someone they aren't just to try to impress people who they shouldn't care about anyway. If someone is judging you on where you buy your clothes or what type of shirts you wear, then the issue is with them, not you. You can look every bit as presentable with cheap clothing as you can with expensive clothing. Actually, the people that buy expensive clothing simply for the fashion value of it are chumps who waste their money on things that don't matter. Now, that's not to say that expensive clothes are always bad. Sometimes buying an expensive coat or shirt is important so it will last, whereas a cheap coat or shirt may not be very well made and may wear out prematurely. But you may not have the option to buy the expensive thing. You may only be able to buy the cheap things more often due to your financial situation, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you are being frugal to work toward increasing your success and your mental growth. The bottom line is to be yourself, be comfortable, and not worry about the opinions of those who don't matter. For those whose opinions do matter, like an employer or a spouse, ensure you are presentable, and most importantly, let your performance define you, not your fashion.